It's a beautiful tradition at a Jewish funeral that we begin with music, with a psalm. I love that so many of you are here because it means that she had great energy. And this 23rd psalm that I'm going to sing, it's associated with funerals. The Lord is my shepherd. But really, it comes from Shabbat afternoon, when we're going to take a nap, a shlaf for Shabbos. And we sing this psalm because we ask for God's protection on that day. So we sing it at a funeral to ask that her soul, that her nefesh, has a journey, a good journey to her next destination. Mizamor leDavid, Adonai Aroi lo echsar, Binotesh yarbitzeni, Almei menuchot ינעלני, נפשי ישוער, ינחני במגלי צדק, אוי למען שמו. כמה כי אלך בגצל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שילדך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לבני שולחן נגד צור, תשענת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. If you'd like to join me, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely tov v'chesed, goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord Adonai forever. You know, when my dad passed away almost 36 years ago, he had a heart attack overnight. Next day, he was gone. And it's such a shock, but it's also something you have to deal with. And these three beautiful daughters, Karen, Diana, and Marcy, they were so amazing at how they dealt with their mom's heart attack and her passing. And I think because of that, it's really a very special day to say goodbye to her here. But we talked a lot about how our soul, our nefesh, continues. And we see that in our children and in our grandchildren, of which she had many. I'd like to read a little bit of this beautiful poem that King Solomon, it's attributed to him. And later Pete Seeger and the Birds made it popular, but I love it. L'chol zman ve'et, l'chol chefetz, tachat hashamayim. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. Eit laledet ve'eit lamut. A time for planting and a time for reaping. Eit lata'at ve'eit lakor natua. A time for birthing, time for dying. Eit laharog ve'eit lirpo. A time for killing and a time for healing. Eit lifrotz ve'eit livnot. Time to tear down and a time to build up. Eit le'ehov ve'eit lisno. There's a time for loving and a time for the opposite. Eit milchama ve'eit shalom. A time for war and a time for peace. Let us pray that we see only peace in our lifetimes. To all the very special people, Jameis, Brian, and Will, her son-in-laws. To Allison and Emily, and Ella and Lucy, and to her stepchildren as well. And to, of course, her brother Dean, who's here today. And very shortly, I'm going to call upon him and a few other family members to speak. Of course, I didn't really have a chance to get to know her myself, but I do know her daughters. And there's a beautiful saying in Hebrew. It says that the crown of the elderly is their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. And so through them, I know her. It's with that in mind that her brother, who knew her as a young child and who was so important to her during her life, Dean, I'd like to call upon him.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dean Leeser, and I'm Joyce's younger brother. For that matter, her only living sibling. When we were adults, she would always introduce me to newcomers as her older brother, and then she'd laugh. She liked to laugh. Needless to say, my wife Ann and I were shocked at how quickly her condition worsened. Even more shocked when she passed away after only 2 days in the hospital. I had planned to come in from Cheyenne and take her out to get a kosher hot dog that day. She was a good person. She was kind, especially to animals. She was loving and generous. She was honest and law-abiding. She always made a good juror when called upon. She really liked people and made friends easily. I miss her a lot. I stopped arguing with her years ago. It was useless anyway. My dad never spanked her, a fate my brother and I never escaped. My dad said that she was 2 or 3 years old. When she was 2 or 3 years old, she used to hide his favorite shoes. Then she would help him look for them. She was always willing to help. When she was still in a high chair, she didn't like the food put in front of her. She would dump it down the nearby heat register. Dad discovered her mischief when the odor gave her away. Still no spanking. I miss her a lot. Once when I was in junior high school, she was helping me with my math homework. I was being obtuse and difficult. In frustration, she sneaked up from behind and hit me on top of my head and screamed, "Maybe I can pound some knowledge into your thick skull." I could have been hurt, but thankfully my thick skull did its job. I miss her a lot. My parents thought she was creative and artistic. When she was a little girl, she made a drawing of a little girl standing and looking out the living room window of her house. The picture's perspective was the front of the house. When you turned the paper over, the picture was inside the house, showing the little girl from the rear looking out the same window. I miss her a lot. She was always my big sister. She took me on my first roller coaster ride. I was scared to death, but she assured me that I'd be all right. She also held my hand when I first went into the ocean. She laughed the whole time and I felt safe. Did I mention I thought she had the neatest handwriting? She was a lefty and her cursive was so round and beautiful. I loved it. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that she made the best matzo balls I've ever tasted, rivaling our mother's. I will miss her a lot and I love her a lot.
I wanted to mention one thing. My wife is a travel agent, and I know that was a big part of her life. And this was the first year, I think, in 30 years that we didn't travel somewhere. And that was really hard. So it must have been really hard for her as well. Her daughters did mention to me that she had a lot of friends, and I see that now, and that she loved to host parties and have people over at the house. With that in mind, I'm going to call upon a few other people to speak. First of all, I'd like to call upon Emily, if she'd like to come forward. Her granddaughter.
So I'm Emily, her granddaughter. Most people here today knew Joyce Fishman, but my sisters, cousins, and I just knew her as Grandma. When I was younger, Grandma's house was a mythical place where there was always a smile and plenty of sweets that my parents never let me eat at home. As I've gotten older, however, I've learned about the qualities that made her a remarkable person, and watching her taught me much about the woman I hope to be. Unfailingly, Grandma reminded people that they were loved. It could be seen in her many offers of food and reminders to get home safe, or genuine questions about how you were doing. Young children are pretty perceptive, and I always felt so loved and comfortable around Grandma growing up. Allison and I had a yearly tradition of going to her office to sell Girl Scout cookies. She always took us around and proudly showed us off to her coworkers. You could tell adored her just as much. Grandma was also the person you wanted to sit next to at a family dinner, but it was quite the coveted position. A seat next to her was quite the honor because it meant being nearly constantly entertained. Even in the past year, as Grandma had the entire foundation of her life shifted as she moved out of her beloved house and into the High Point Senior Care Center, everywhere she went, there was always a person or two sitting next to her. Whenever I went over to visit her at her new home, she was always sitting with someone I recognized, but someone new would be there too. Even yesterday, as I was helping clean out her apartment, many of Grandma's friends at High Point said hello, asked how I was doing, and told me how much they missed her. Her ability to form meaningful connections with so many people, even in a short period of time, is not something you see in every other person. There was nothing like finishing a Hanukkah celebration or Passover Seder, and after everyone went home and the dishes were drying, listening to Grandma tell the story of her mother's journey to America as the candlelight dwindled. Her retelling of family stories and commitment to our traditions taught all her granddaughters the importance of our Jewish heritage, and are some of my fondest memories of her. It's already unimaginable for me to think about a Seder without Grandma at the table, a big smile on her face as she repeatedly refused to sit down, asking again and again if she can get anyone anything. It's impossible to fill the hole that Grandma left in her lives. Her loss is what happens first, but now we must live without her. But I would not for a second take away any of that pain. For all of the hurt I now feel, I got to experience her love for 18 years. It's a trade-off, and it's what you receive when you love and are loved in return by an extraordinary person. I don't quite want to imagine life without Grandma, but I will tell you how I'm going to live it, just as she would. I'm going to think positively in every situation, no matter my circumstance. Remember the importance of maintaining friendships and staying connected to one's family, and find humor everywhere I can. I miss her very much. Thank you.
You know, I've been teaching young Jews for over 40 years, and sometimes I worry these days, but I don't anymore. That was really beautiful. I believe another one of her granddaughters, Ella, is going to say a few words.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm one of her younger granddaughters. Ever since we were very little, our trips to Denver have been filled with excitement. We would pile into the car with our suitcases and our pillows, and when we arrived, we would go straight to Grandma's house. And every trip, she would open the door with a big smile on her face, waiting with a big hug, a remark about how much we had grown, and what seemed like millions of different ice cream flavors waiting in her freezer. All of our memories of her are filled with laughter, warmth, and lots of people. Everywhere she went, she made a point to tell people that we were her granddaughters visiting all the way from Albuquerque, and we could always tell how proud and excited she was to have us visit, even if it was just for a few days. My favorite part of staying with her was the mornings at her house. She had a big bed full of stuffed animals waiting for guests, and when we woke up, we could always hear Grandma running around the kitchen, laughing and talking with whoever was already awake, and arranging toasted bagels, cream cheese, and lox on her kitchen table to make sure everyone left her house with a smile on their face and a very full stomach. She will forever be one of my biggest role models. She lived a long, happy, and exciting life, and she never failed her role as an anchor for our family and our community. She taught me to live with optimism, perseverance, and so much love. I have no doubt that I would not be the person I am today without having known her, and I feel so lucky to have had her in my life long enough to make losing her so hard. I'm going to miss her a lot, and I love her a lot.
Joyce had a lifelong wonderful friend, Sherry, and I'd like to call upon her.
Joyce knew me from the day I was born. Our parents were very, very good friends. In fact, my brother and Mort were the same age. My sister and Joyce were 2 weeks apart, and Deanie and I were 2 weeks apart. Makes you wonder. Through the years, our lives crossed many times. She and Ron sat in front of us on the holidays, and I watched the three girls grow up, always sweet, kind, and nice. Then I started working at Majestic and saw Joyce all the time. I loved it. After I was married a few years, I asked my mom if she knew how to make crepe luck. She did not, but one year we tried and couldn't make the little paper stick. So my mom said, call Ann, which I did. She ran over with her apron, change of shoes, and a hairnet. From that time on until Ann died, we made crepe luck every year. Joyce never came because she was always working. After Ann passed away, Joyce wanted to learn how to make crepe luck. So we went to her house the first couple of years with a friend of mine and Diana and Allison, who did a great job, and Andy Spa. I taught them how to make the dough. When done kneading, Ann would say, tell me if it feels like a baby's tushy. If it didn't, you never use that dough. Wrap the meat like a pot and make it look like a pocketbook. Make it look like a pocketbook, Ann always said, and boil and freeze them. Joyce made so many because Mort and Dean loved them. We just had to keep making them because they must have eaten them like peanuts. After a few years and Joyce's stove not working, we came to my house. My two girls were ready to learn that. Joyce and I both made meat and onions, and then Joyce would combine them when she got to my house. Her meat was light, my meat was dark. Her onions were dark, mine were perfect, light. She would ask me what time she could come over. I would say 9. She would arrive promptly at 9:30. The first thing she did was have a cup of coffee. After that, she'd mix the meats and the onions together. She would then salt the mixture. I told her it was way too much salt. She added more. She was right. It was always perfect. We had so much fun that there were 6 or 7 of us and we would never stop talking. Joyce liked to do everything. She liked to make the dough, make the crepe luck, and help me with taking them out of the boiling water. What a great memory, not only for me, but for my girls, Tracy and Tricia. I saw Joyce about 2 months ago with Deanie, and the first thing she said to me was, "Are we going to make prep lock?" I told her, yes, of course. 2 years ago was the last time we all got together before the pandemic. We made 9 batches, used 11 pounds of meat, 3 dozen eggs, and made 25 dozen prep lock. Wow. Which each person took home at least 2 dozen. I always kept track. This year won't be the same. Joyce will be sorely missed. May she rest in peace.
I'm inviting you over to my house. Okay? When I first met with the sisters, they weren't sure who was going to speak. It looks like all 3 of you. So come on up and.
Karen? Explaining to all of you how much our mom means to us is easy. She was our everything. We realize how lucky we are to have had her in our lives. She lived a full, fruitful life and accomplished so much. She told everyone how proud she was of her children and grandchildren, and we have no doubt that she loved us with all of her heart. She was one of the funniest people we've ever met. She kept us laughing even when we wanted to cry. She could laugh at anything, even when times were bad. She and her brothers, Mort and Dean, inherited the sense of humor from their incredible mom, Anne. She loved a good joke and telling stories, most of which we heard many times, but always enjoyed hearing again. Being around mom and her friends included a lot of laughter and sisterhood as they traded stories and one-liners like professional comedians. After Grandma Ann died, Mom took over the role as a matriarch of our family and held us all together. She was a natural networker and expert at Jewish geography. Her dining room table could always fit one more person who would otherwise be celebrating holidays alone. She fed us so well, one of the ways she showered us with her love, and we will miss her brisket, kreplach, blunt souffle, jello molds, and matzo balls. She taught us so much, but most importantly, she modeled how to be kind in any way that she cared for the friends and family and was always there for anyone when they needed her.
One of her best qualities was that she never gave up. She was our cheerleader through thick and thin. She even wrote a theme song for us when we were kids that we sing over and over. And no, we will not sing it. She believed in willpower and taught us that we could accomplish anything we wanted in life as long as we put our minds to it. She also taught us to plan a vacation while we were on a vacation, so we always had something to look forward to. We can't wait to start doing that again to honor her memory. You knew when she was mad at you, but she always got over it. She was very feisty and always up for an adventure. When Karen and Mom drove anywhere together, they inevitably got lost. They laughed a lot, yelled a little, but they eventually ended up where they needed to be. After these adventures, Mom would always say, "I hope they have alcohol where we're going because I really need a good drink." This past year was really hard on her since she had so many things change at once. She stopped driving, broke her hip, lost her husband, Ron, had to move out of their home. And in the pandemic, and anyone would have given up. But after being in the dumps for a while, Mom determined to make the best of it. She rehabbed her hip and stayed active through the help of Greg, her amazing physical therapist, who not only helped her heal, but kept her sane and became her friend. She made many new friends and enjoyed the daily activities at the residence. She was out of her apartment so much we could only be guaranteed to reach her on the phone before 8:30 in the morning or after 7 p.m. at night. Although we weren't together much this year, we had a nightly ritual that we all treasured. She hated to eat alone, so one of us would Zoom with her to keep her company at dinner. Those calls meant as much to us as they did to her, as we chatted about our days and made sure everyone was doing okay. Mom's sudden death has left a huge hole in our hearts and family. We weren't ready for her to go, and we are all just as surprised as you are that she isn't here. One of the things she always said was that it takes a funeral to get people together. We know she is here because she always loved being the center of attention. We're grateful that we were by her side when she died, which many families were not able to do as their loved ones suffered in hospitals this past year. And seeing all of you here in person means so much because we can't imagine doing this without you. Thank you for sharing your memories of Mom. To know how many people loved her will keep us going as we try to navigate life without her. Our hearts are heavy, but we know that she would not want us to be down. We look forward to spending more time with all of you and experiencing joy, love, laughter, connection, and many other good things in life as we live by her example. We appreciate all of you and want to thank you all for coming to celebrate our remarkable Mom.
In just a moment, we're going to have a chance to fulfill a beautiful mitzvah, a commandment called chesed shel emet, kindness to the dead. It's a mitzvah that Joyce cannot say thank you, so we do it for us and for her. As we do that, we're going to do what's called kriya, which means to cut, literally to tear. The girls are wearing a ribbon on the left side, which is what you wear for a parent. And they're going to tear those ribbons. And we're going to say a bracha, which says that God is the righteous judge. That's okay. That way you can see the Jury? Yeah, it's already a little bit. Just to up a little. So we'll say the bracha together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam dayan ha'emet. Blessed are you, God, the righteous judge. Adonai Natan va'Adonai Lakach. That is Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. May God's name. Shir lamalot esayna el heharim meyayin yavu ezrim meim Adonai ose shamayim var. Lavol shalom. Go in peace, Joyce. Afarti yeh. From the dust we come, the dust we return. It's a tradition to not hand the shovel to the next person, but to put it back in the earth if you can. I'd like to invite anyone who would like to participate to please come forward.
So I just was gonna let them solve They're the ones that's sick.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It was just my folks that were freshman. I mean, I don't, I never found out how they got together. They were just travel together. Yeah, we had the kids. Right. Or two. I don't think I see it as much as we learned. They were not sharing together. My husband.
Getting in line or can you tell?
I see Mark on.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Rosie. Joyce. Rosie. See, but Mommy, you're here.
How about you? Nice to see you.
Where's he?
Oh, yeah.
Right here. No, this is my dad. This is Jake's first husband. Jake was her physical therapist at the place. He helped her survive the year. Basically got her through it.
Yeah. So we're going to tell you. You said you just.
Yeah, I see.
Oh my God.
Oh.
I thought maybe his current. It's amazing. So we didn't recognize somebody what's their match.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's so wonderful that you've all got a chance to be with each other today. I'm going to ask if you could all please quiet down. Thank you so much. There'll be a chance right afterwards, you guys. I don't know how safe it is, but hang out. It is a beautiful tradition in a traditional Jewish cemetery that the top of the coffin has to be covered before we can say Kaddish, and that's why they're taking the extra time to cover the very top of the coffin. And later, of course, we can fill it in. So I'm going to ask the family to prepare for the Kaddish. And after that, I'm going to sing the El Maleh Rachamim, the memorial prayer. Joyce has a beautiful Hebrew name, Yafa Devorah. That means beautiful Devorah, and it certainly fits. We'll say Kaddish together. Yitkadam, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Amen. Be'alma, Divrach, Chiruteh, Be'amlich Malchuteh, B'chaye Echon, U'b'yom Echon, U'b'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'b'zman Kariv Umru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, Yalam L'omel Maya, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitroma, Yitnaseh, B'yit hadar, b'yit aleh, b'yit halal, shemei d'kudsha b'richu, le'ela, b'yitpo, b'irchata, b'shirata, tushbechata, b'nechemata, damiran be'alma, imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba, min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom imroma, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. El Maleh Rachamim, Shocher B'meromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona. Kanefe Ashechina B'malot Kedoshim U'Diorim Kezor Harakia Mazehirim Et Nishmat Yafa Devorah Bat Henech V'Chana Shehalecha Le'olama Began Eden Oy Began Eden Tehei Menuchata Anabala Rachamim Hastira B'Seitiken of the Le'olamim Utzeror B'Tzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'Tanuach B'Shalom Mishtava V'Nomar together. El Maleh Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Yafa Devorah, the daughter of Henech and Chana, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life, and may she rest in peace. And let us all say together, Amen. In Judaism, we have a beautiful formula of comfort that we offer to the mourners. And I'd like you to say those words after me. Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avelei Sion, Virushalayim. It means, may you be comforted amongst all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem, as in days of old. I'd like to ask you now if we can form two lines going out to the road. So come on out and line up opposite each other. So if you see everybody's on one side, come on over. And then we're going to escort the family. This beautiful line is called a shura, a line of comfort. By the way, because of the COVID situation, we're not doing in-person Shiva. But tonight, if you go on the bmh-bj.org website, you'll find the Zoom link that we will be having Mincha Mariv at 6 o'clock this evening. And of course, we will be mentioning Joyce and her family tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.